For those of you that don't know me, I work for the Sheriff's Office. I work in our crime prevention unit and special operations. I handle the technical aspect of what is generally termed as law enforcement. What we do in our office is we look at the technical aspects of why crime occurs, how it occurs, and we try to effect a change that takes the human element out of it. Some crime is driven by environment, driven by opportunity, driven by psychology. And our unit works on those aspects, not the human aspect, not the actual criminal aspect. So we go through and we look at the hows, the whys, wheres, and what can we fix so that another person doesn't find that a desirable target. Through that, we write numerous programs that we put out as educational things to the public all the time. As far as my background is concerned, I'm getting ready to start my 22nd year in this profession. I'm going to do it until they kick me out. And the last 10 has been in this particular specialty, looking at crime from a psychological perspective versus a human elemental perspective. So we'll jump into this. Today's topic is basically personal safety for realtors. Last year at the, and if I'm wrong, please bear with me, the Northern Virginia Realtors Association, and I could be wrong, had a conference that was right over here in Ashburn. And I got a call from them after I wrote an article that was published on this particular topic, and they wanted me to do a 1-hour presentation as part of their training series at the conference. So we wrote this program for them and went down and did it and got a lot of good feedback. So I offered it when I came here for the meeting a while back. That was about helping you guys integrate with us and vice versa, so that you knew what was going on in your communities as you're trying to sell homes, and vice versa. You feed information back to us about what you might be hearing in those communities. Skip over that. So to kind of get this ball going, these are just, I went through on the internet last year and just typed in Realtor Assault and came up with 4 very quick stories. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, basically a female realtor advertising a local publication, contacted by phone, and then when she went to meet the client, she was sexually assaulted at night point at the vacant house. Alston, Massachusetts, realtor reported showing an apartment and the existing residents assaulted him during the showing. Might have been a foreclosure or maybe an eviction kind of thing going on, so something you got to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Napa Valley, California, assaulted by a potential buyer. Georgia, they put out a description after they kidnapped her and assaulted her, a realtor, or 2 realtors at the same time. And here more locally, and this isn't a new trend by any means. I grew up in a very, anybody here know where Stafford County is? Okay, I grew up in Stafford a long, long time ago. Okay, when it was still small, there was only one grocery store. When I was in middle school, we had a realtor violently assaulted and murdered in a home. And it rocked our community, because having something like happen in this small, tight-knit, predominantly farming community was devastating. The lady was active in the PTA with the kids' school. She was very well known, and to have that happen in an area, we're not in DC. It's that mindset of the country, just rocked our community. So it's not a new trend by any means. These things do happen. They do take place around the country. They have taken place here in Loudoun County. We've had assaults on realtors that have taken place here during my career. So it's certainly not a new thing by any means. So we're going to look at this. We're going to try to figure out, we're going to try to mentally prepare you, physically prepare you a little bit so that you have something to think about when you go out to these places. Because believe it or not, everybody in this room can prevent that act. Regardless of your background, regardless of your education, you have a way to prevent this, and we'll talk about this a little bit. So why are realtors victimized? Well, there's a lot of potential reasons, but could they potentially be easier targets? Okay. In some cases, yeah, even male or female, regardless of gender. Okay, you're isolated. Okay, if you're showing a house in the west end of the county, the next closest house could be a mile away. That's where your help's coming from. Okay, if you had to flee that residence for your safety and you can't get back to your vehicle, you might have a mile to cover before you can find assistance. Lack of defensive measures. You're in a place, you're not in your home, you don't know where the knives are kept in which drawer. If you have a firearm in your residence, do you know where the firearm's in this residence, if it's still occupied? Lack of lines of communication. What if you're showing a house that's vacant, the phones don't work anymore? Did you check your cell phone to see if it was working before you showed it? Has anybody even checked that to see if phones even work in that particular place? We have lots of dead places in the county where phones don't work. We have places in the county our police radios don't work. Okay. Lack of familiarity with the general area or the structure, the building that you're showing yourself. If you do commercial work, you're showing a warehouse. Do you know where the exits are? Do you know the floor plan of the office that you're showing? Do you know the floor plan of the house you're showing? You know, do you get there with enough time to walk the floor plan so that you know where the doors are? You know, a lot of the houses that we have in Lowe's Island and Lansdowne, places like that, some I had never seen before until I'd been in some of these houses, but they have a back stairway that comes from the master suite down into the kitchen. I'd never seen that before in the house. So do you know that that's there? You know, that's your way off that floor. You have two means of getting off that upper floor if something goes wrong. You know, so do you know these floor plans? Do you know the area? If you had to leave the house and you couldn't get back to your vehicle, do you know which direction to go in to seek assistance? Okay, do you know where the next closest house is? Do you know where the next closest road is? Largely because it's customer service based. I know the realtor, I live in Front Royal, and I was going back and forth between here and there with our realtor looking at houses. And until she found out I was a law enforcement officer, because it's out in the country, she always brought somebody else with her. Always. It's always two of them. And I was always wondering, I thought, well, and finally I asked her, I said, Beth, I said, is she in training? She goes, no. Anytime we show a house in a rural area, two of us come together, one of us stays outside and the other one goes in and shows the house. And I thought, you know, that's a really great plan if you have the personnel to make that work. But it's a customer service-based profession. Okay, and sometimes when you're trying to close that deal, you're trying to make that effort to get that client into the house, do we compromise our safety? I guarantee you everybody in this room has done it at some point. Because I guarantee you nobody in this room can tell me you've never shown a house to a potential client where something about that client just gave you a bad feeling, but you pressed on and didn't show it anyway. And we're going to talk about why you shouldn't do that. Okay? So, regardless of gender, our bodies tell us a lot about the way we feel, about the way we think. Potential offenders read these details. Okay? They'll be able to tell whether you're defensive, whether you're afraid of them, whether they're controlling the situation by your, what we call nonverbal cues. It's the same cues we read in criminal suspects when we detain them. We can tell whether or not, are they nervous, are they scared, are they defensive, what's their posture, are they aggressive. It's the same things they're reading from you to determine whether or not you may be a better victim than someone else. You know, your aggressive types, and this is you guys as realtors. You know, if someone's making you uncomfortable, do you back away? Do you start to take on defensive postures that tell them that they're getting to you? Or when they get close to you, do you have the aggressive actions where you prepare yourself in case something's going to happen? Do they see you start to stiffen up? You know, do they see you start to clench your body up? Do you bring your hands up in a defensive gesture? Okay? All of those signals tell them what your mindset is. Okay? In law enforcement, we can always tell how comfortable a law enforcement officer is with the person they're standing near. Okay? Because if we're near somebody we don't know anything about, our hands are generally up near our face, we're prepared for something bad to happen. Okay? Because we automatically assume that of every person just based on our history and training. But how do you react to those people? What defensive gestures are you putting on? And these are just a few. There's a lot out here. There's about 60 for each personality type, psychologically. So if you catch yourself doing some of this, someone else is probably seeing it too. And that may or may not make them choose to victimize you. Because quite frankly, if I am looking for a victim, and in this circumstance as a realtor, and when I get close to him or her, I see them back away and they bring their hands up and start to close up their body, that tells me I'm controlling them at that point. Okay? That means I've gotten into their personal space. I know where their personal zone is. Okay? If I see their eyes darting around, I know they're in a panic state. They're looking for a way out. Okay? They're not examining the situation. Okay? They're already defensive, and that means I'm controlling the situation. Okay? We'll talk about how we get rid of some of these things by having a plan in our head ahead of time. So how do we change these things so that these types of offenders don't control the environment, so they don't control the situation? Well, first are by our choices, the choices we make when we go out to show a house, etc. Situational environmental awareness. Are we recognizing what's actually going on around us? A plan to action. Okay, and that's not a typo. Okay, a plan to action. You have a plan and you're going to turn it into an act when something goes wrong. A willingness to act. Do you have the mental mindset to follow through on the plan that you developed in case something happened? A plan to escape. Because once you act, once you achieve distance, Now what? For most people, a determined offender, you're not going to fight them off for more than a few seconds. Unless you're a highly aggressive, highly trained person, you're going to fight for the first couple of seconds, and then you're going to get overwhelmed by their violence. That's what generally happens with civilians. Military personnel is a little different, okay? But civilians, that person's going to overreact to your actions, and it's going to overwhelm you in a lot of cases. A plan to escape. Like I said, once you've committed that act, you have to get away. You're looking for an escape route. That's where we talk about knowing your environment. And then the report to law enforcement, we'll talk about why that's important. So let's understand this crime a little bit. This model falls into all types of crime. I've been using this model for more than 10 years. It's not my model. It actually came from a psychologist at Mary Washington College, a psychology professor rather, at Mary Washington College. And so far, no one's been able to tell me a crime that doesn't fit this model. I always tell people, you tell me a crime that doesn't fit this, and I can explain it to you, I'll buy the lunch. Crime all falls into this. Ability, opportunity, desire. Desire is the one we have no control over. That's the mental aspect of the offender. We can't control that. As citizens, as law enforcement, even as judges, we can't control that. That person's desire to go out and commit that crime isn't affected by us. Okay? You can put them in jail, they come out and they reoffend. It's just that driving desire. What we look to affect is ability and opportunity. Can they commit the crime undetected? Are we putting ourselves in a situation where they have the opportunity to commit the crime with little or no exposure or risk? Okay? And that's where you have to start to create this perception of risk by having your cell phone with you as you're doing your walkthrough, by having another person go with you if you just get some bad feeling about the person that you're showing the house to. You know, about making sure that if you're going to show a house, somebody knows where you are, they know what time the showing is, and that there's a specific time you're going to follow up back with them by telephone to let them know that the showing is either still going on, or you're on your way back to the office, or you're on your way to another destination. So the choices. Every day we all make, even law enforcement officers, military personnel, we make unconscious choices that put us in harm's way. What we have to do is, as individuals, we have to recognize those choices. In your profession, like we've talked about a little bit, have you decided what you're going to do if something happens? Do you know where you can get help at? Have you chose to show a property late in the evening because that's the only time the client's available? Well, is it really the only time the client's available? And do you compromise your safety for a sale? I say no, okay, because that's what they're banking on. Our everyday routine makes us predictable. Okay? How many of you show houses where you stay at a house for the entire day and just random people come in and look at the house? No one?
Like open houses?
Yeah, like open houses.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Okay. Is that predictable? Yeah, you guys put signs out, open house on this day, this time. They know someone's going to be there. They know they're probably going to be by themselves. They know that the house is probably going to be empty, and you're there. You're at a fixed location. That makes you predictable. That's when you really have to be cognizant of what you're doing. Because if someone's looking to victimize a person, they're going to look for the best opportunity where as many of their ducks are in the row that they want them to be in. You know, isolated location, know when they're going to be there, know when they arrive, know how long they're going to be there. You know, they'll be able to tell whether or not someone's at the house because they've already drove by the house and they know there's only one car there. That means more likely no one's being shown the house right now. And that's the predictable nature that we need to fight. And yes, well, again, it's a customer service oriented business, but there's a certain balance to that. We have to break our routines and think about our surroundings. Okay? We teach this a lot in some of our personal safety classes where we get so locked in on what's going on, we're not seeing everything that's going on around us. Okay? The stuff that's going on around us is what's setting off our internal signals. What a person does when they get close to you, how they talk to you, how they gesture. You know, are they following you or are you following them? Okay, are they leading you someplace? You have to be cognizant of that surrounding. Have they brought you into a room and now they've repositioned so they're between you and the door? We have to be cognizant of those. We got to be aware of those surroundings, and all that has to do with what the other person's doing. As you see them change, you have to change. It's a constant evolving thing. A couple of options. You know, do you meet at the office or do you meet at the location? Are we too trusting? Yeah, generally we are. We'd like to think that the world's a nice place and people won't hurt us and everybody is law-abiding citizens, but guess what? That's not factual. Your work routine, we talked about that. Are you predictable? Are you showing a house at the same time? Are you doing an open house at the same location?